Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.
Good morning. Welcome to the Connecting the Dots podcast with Dr. Wilmer Leon, and I am Wilmer Leon. Here's the point. We have a tendency to view current events as though they happen in a vacuum, failing to understand the broader historic context in which most events take place. During each episode, my guests and I have probing, provocative, and in-depth discussions that connect the dots between these events and the broader historic context in which these events take place, thus allowing you all to better understand and analyze the events that impact the global village in which we live. Well, on today's episode, the issue before us today is November 6th, the day after. What to do, what to do, what to do. My first guest is a foreign correspondent was a foreign correspondent for the Washington Post. His latest book is Class War in America, How the Elites Divide the Nation by Asking, Are you a worker or are you white? Also, two-time Pulitzer Prize finalist. His work can be found at Patreon as well as Black Republic Media. John Jeter, my brother, welcome back.
Good morning, or maybe it's not such a good morning for much of the nation.
So, John, for all intents and purposes, election 2024 is over. And what I mean by that is some of the swing states are still being counted, but for all intents and purposes, Donald Trump will be the 47th president of the United States. As you predicted, Trump has won going away. I predicted last week a 293-245 Harris victory because I changed my analysis in the last week after the Trump racist hate fest 2024 in New York. I thought that was so appalling that the trend would shift. Obviously, it didn't. And let me, Dino writes, I guess supporting a genocide wasn't such a good strategy after all. And to somebody else asked a question, can you all ask questions today? Yes, you can through the chat, and we will get as many of those questions answered as possible. That is from Win Forever. Yes, you can ask questions. We'll do our best to get them all answered. John Jeter, your thoughts?
Yeah, I did predict this. I'm 2 for 3 with Trump. I predicted 2016. I was wrong in 2020. I underestimated the turnout, the record high turnout. I'm not shocked at all. I'm only shocked at the margin. Although I did think he was going to win all of the swing states, and it looks like he might indeed do that. So, it turns out that it wasn't so much democracy on the ballot as our humanity. And while I realize, of course, that most people were not voting for the genocide or against the genocide in Gaza, it was probably the economy and other economic reasons that they voted, immigration in particular. I still think that the margin of victory was probably going to be, particularly in states like Michigan and Wisconsin. I think that the genocide, the first live stream genocide in history, is going to be a decisive factor, a turning point, providing the margin of victory for Trump in these swing states. You can't run from your base. You can't punish your base for 32 years, as the Democrats have done, and expect them to come out and vote for you every time in huge numbers. And I think they're at the end of their run. They have seen this electoral model exhaust itself. I think they're going to have to regroup and either progress or perish.
Elaborate on the point. You can't run from your base, because I think you're absolutely right. One of the things that Donald Trump did and has always done, he speaks to his base. Yes. I thought that his failing to make the shift from a primary campaign to a general election campaign was a mistake. But for him, he stuck with the base, and the base stuck with him.
Yeah, well, this is a deeply racist nation, so it's no surprise that they elected a deeply racist president, particularly when there's no alternative, there's no viable alternative to, I haven't seen the numbers, but I'm assuming that once again, somewhere near 100 million eligible voters did not vote. The Democrats don't do anything to gin up the vote, to turn out their vote, and so this is why they lost. It'd be interesting to see what the numbers are. Is there, if there is any kind of increase for Trump, or if he, when he won against Hillary Clinton, he got fewer votes in Wisconsin, for example, than did Mitt Romney. 4 years earlier in 2012. So it'll be very interesting to see just what the turnout is. Although I know that he won the popular vote, I think, and that is rare for the Republicans. So this is just not surprising for anyone, I think, who follows the history of the Democratic Party. And also, let me say this: I also wonder if the fix wasn't in. I'm referring to Bill Clinton's appearance before, I believe, a heavily Muslim audience last week in Michigan, in which she basically qualified the murder of Palestinians to their face. I almost wonder if the Clintons weren't trying to fix this race against Kamala Harris. It was a bad candidate and a worse strategy. I would have been surprised if she won. I thought she might keep it a little bit closer than she did, but I would have been really surprised if she won. And I don't even think it's a surprise for the party. I think they realize that by continuing down this spider hole of backing genocide, of running with Liz Cheney, that they were in real jeopardy. I think they knew that they were probably going to lose, but they just weren't willing to back up off their backing their Zionist cause.
Monroe asked, "Do you think?" Wait a minute, it just left me. Do you think that the so-called white woman Republican surge backfired against Harris?
I think that's exactly what happened. Again, we want to see the numbers, but I just think, I think, well, this is what I expect when I finally am able to see the numbers. I think she lost this race because of three cities primarily: Philadelphia, Detroit, and Milwaukee. I think, I'm guessing black turnout was very low. In Michigan and Wisconsin, I think you're also going to see hundreds of thousands of Arabs and Muslims and probably other groups who didn't vote for her. Although I'm surprised that Jill Stein didn't get more backing at the polls. But yeah, this strategy of running with Liz Cheney when your base are blacks and people of color in the urban areas, it was a horrible strategy. I don't know what they're thinking. Well, I guess I do know what they're thinking. This is the best. This is what they've always done. But yeah, this idea of running towards competing with the Republican Party for white Republican votes was it's silly. It's always been.
David says, just imagine if the abortion issue wasn't a motivating factor for some of the Harris support, it would have been even worse. And that's a great point from David, because that was another element that I added to this, thinking that this women's access to healthcare issue would be incredibly motivating. And it was, but it wasn't enough.
Yeah, I just didn't. I didn't see her having. Again, the strategy just seems so flawed. Relying on white women. The abortion issue, I thought, if anything was going to help her win it, the gender gap, I thought, if she was going to win, that was going to do it. But it just didn't seem like they did enough to make that the paramount issue, particularly when the economy, people, this also is a referendum on the media, not just the polls, which didn't really reflect Donald Trump's victory by this margin, but also their constantly reinforcing that the economy is so great when that's not what most people, black, white, and otherwise, are feeling. I think, they're trying to blame misogyny on this loss. It's not misogyny. It is an economy that doesn't produce many benefits for most people. Most people are living worse than our parents did. And I think that's why she lost. Yeah.
John, that was going to be really my next question was talk about this. In listening to the shows this morning, I'm hearing this. They didn't vote for her because she's a black woman. They didn't vote for her because she's a black woman. So a couple of things. One, as a child, I was told by my parents, you're going to have to be 4 times as smart, work 5 times as hard to get half as far because you're black in America. And that if you find yourself with a problem, let race be the last thing you factor in to be sure that you've done all you're supposed to do. So if you get fired from your job, well, before you start saying they fired me because I'm black, well, did you go to work? Did you come to work on time? Did you leave early? Did you take too long at lunch? Did you do your job? Ask yourself those questions before you move to the very convenient element of they fired me because I was black. Right. So she didn't get the promotion from VP to president. She didn't get the promotion. Well, on the women's issue, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote in 2016 with 66 million votes. Hillary lost the Electoral College. Barack Obama was elected twice as a black man in America. Now, I understand black woman, that's a problem. I understand that. But this is a multivariate equation. There are a number of factors that contributed to this defeat. And if you just stay stuck on they didn't select her because she's a black woman, you'll never get to the bottom line of your message sucked. You tried to convince people you're not Donald Trump. That was obvious. You tried to convince people that Donald Trump is the reincarnation of the devil. He tells us that every day. We didn't need you, Kamala, telling us the obvious. We needed you to lay out very clearly how you're going to improve the lives of disaffected Americans. We needed you to tell Americans you weren't going to support genocide, and you failed to do that. And the Democrats are still failing if they don't get the damn message. John Jeter.
I could not agree more. Think about how this race might have turned out if Kamala Harris, even with the live stream genocide, which probably didn't affect the vote of more than 5% of the electorate. What if she had ran on a campaign to, at long last, create Medicare for all, a single payer healthcare system? How much different would this race have turned out? She would have had to have really sort of brought that home.
Didn't Barack Obama run on that?
Exactly. He and think about it this way. What if Barack Obama in 2012 against Mitt Romney, what if he had run not even on single payer healthcare, but a public option? Just a public option, right? That wouldn't even have been close. So the
and they ran on abortion. Barack Obama ran on abortion.
Right.
Twice and didn't deliver. Joe Biden ran on abortion and didn't deliver. So now, Democrats, why should the public believe that the 4th time around you're running on abortion and you're going to deliver? And the reason that they didn't deliver in the first 3, Barack Obama said, even after the election, that wasn't really my issue.
Right.
He said that publicly. Right. I know I ran on it, but that's not really a priority for me. Why? Because it has proven to be more effective as a campaign issue than a solution to a problem. But riddle me this, John Jeter. What if Kamala could have run on, we promised this and delivered it? What if she had run on that? Because that's what campaigns are. That's what politics is about. Delivering on policy.
It's almost like a Jedi mind trick is the strategy of the Democrats, where they see if they can win without meeting any of the electors of their constituents' demands. And frankly, for much of the last 32 years, they have succeeded, but this time they didn't. And I think they're going to have to regroup. I think they have to realize this strategy just does not work. Of punishing, and that's what it is. They're punishing particularly the Black constituents who do not come out to vote for them in the numbers that they used to. And what I mean by that is, this history. That's another thing too. This history, right, that we all know, and it accumulates. Their mishandling of the subprime mortgage crisis, and so people, Black people, which targeted Black people disproportionately. People remember that the omnibus crime bill. People remember that. Joe Biden. People remember that phone call he had with the Black Miss Leadership class, really right after the election, in which he basically backtracked from everything, including the George Floyd policing bill. Nothing has changed since George Floyd was executed before our eyes. People do remember these things, and I think the Democrats don't. They really think that we're stupid, right? And you could argue that maybe we have been in the past, but what did the slaves used to say, as Amiri Baraka quoted them, we may be wrong, but we won't be wrong always. And I think now we are in the right. Although look, I'm not gloating. I mean, Trump is a madman, and that's
Correct.
something that the Democrats should realize. They lost to a madman. No matter who won today, we were going to have the fight of our lives ahead of us, and that's what the people really need to realize. We have the fight of our lives ahead of us.
And to that point, you lost to Donald Trump twice.
Donald Trump.
And the Democrats don't. Well, I'd like to say that they don't get the message, but honestly, I believe they get the message and they don't care, because they, for all intents and purposes, are funded by the same benefactors that fund the Republicans. Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, Boeing. What did John, what's his name, the former CEO of Boeing, say? Calhoun said, when asked in 2020 about the Trump-Biden election, he was asked, well, who does Boeing really prefer? He said, doesn't matter. We're still going to get paid.
Right.
So I don't think it's that the Democrats don't get the message. I believe they hear the message loud and clear. But to your earlier point, they're running away from their base.
Yeah, and in that mix where and I think most people realize that both parties are responsive to Wall Street, to big oil. I think it becomes almost a battle of attrition. And Trump, for whatever, for all the myriad critiques of him, and there are many, and they are legitimate, he is authentic, right? He's a madman, but he believes what he says, and that comes through, particularly against someone like Kamala Harris. I mean, I think Barack Obama's intelligence is extremely overrated, but he is far smarter than Kamala and far more charming. Kamala Harris is just charmless, and so the inauthenticity of the Democratic candidates, including Kamala, including her boss Joe Biden, really comes through and really hurts them. They have a hard time fielding good candidates. Barack Obama was sort of a stroke of genius, but I don't know who they would field him. I think they're going to probably look at this guy from the governor of Maryland. I can't his name. Yeah, I think they're probably going to be looking at him
more.
Yeah, but he's not. He's probably better than Kamala, but he's not.
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet. No.
Not yet.
No.
The seeds of the current Democratic demise were sown by Clinton and turning the party away from its roots towards the well-heeled oligarchs. The Democratic Legislative Council.
Yes.
Bill Clinton took the Democratic Party to the right and also took Black leadership of the party to the right. talk about the fact that now we as a people, we don't have real leadership, political leadership. It's go along to get along. When you have what's the brother from New York who was supposed to be the speaker if the Democrats won? Hakeem Jeffries.
Yes.
When you have Hakeem Jeffries going to CARICOM to convince CARICOM to back American imperialism, when you have Linda Thomas Greenfield at the UN trying to convince us genocide is okay. Kamala Harris went to CARICOM.
And APAC.
And APAC. They're operating against the interest of Black people. John Jeter.
Yeah, no, this, and we've talked about this. I talk about this a lot in my book. This system of racial capitalism. Racial capitalism is the system of capitalism which pits workers against each other, so that we're always fighting each other and not our real oppressor. But it survives by peeling off more and more people. It peeled off Germans and Irish and Hungarians, after the Civil War, leading up to the Great Depression, made them white, gave them a white identity, peeled off Jews, many Jews, not all Jews, many Jews after the Holocaust, offered them an opportunity to be white and protected. And really since the late 60s, it has peeled off more and more of the Black elite, particularly after the deaths of one Fred Hampton in 1969, and then 20 years later, Harold Washington, the first Black mayor of Chicago, who was elected, by the way, in a city that was not predominantly Black. And so they have fine-tuned their tactics of peeling off layers and layers of the Black elite and turning them, weaponizing them against the Black working class. And so now you practically don't have anyone in the Black leadership class who is willing or able to represent the interests of the Black working class. You just don't. I'm hard pressed to name a single person, certainly at the federal level, congressional lawmakers, or even mayors, right? Eric Adams, Johnson in Chicago. Can't remember her name in Los Angeles, but these are not people who have a very close relationship with the Black community. So it really is. When I say that we really have to get ready for the fight of our lives, it really is in some ways a fulfillment of Malcolm X's prophecy that he said before he died. I do think we'll have another civil war, but it won't be Black versus white. It's going to be the haves versus the have-nots. I think there's going to be a racial element to it, but there's a lot of truth in what he said. It's going to be the haves versus the have-nots, and we're just gonna let's get ready to rumble because there's no other way to do it but to fight it out.
Your book, Class War in America: How the Elites Divide the Nation by Asking, "Are you a worker or are you white?" Before we get out, tell the audience about your book, where they can get it, folks. I've read it. Phenomenal work, as is always with John Jeter. John.
Yeah, so my book, it took me 15 years to complete this book. A lot of research that basically concludes that the oligarchs, the ruling class, has basically mopped the floor with the working class, both Black and whites, over the last 40 years, and for much of the last 160 years since the end of slavery, because they have managed to pit us against each other, and most explicitly, they've been able to speak something called an N-word into existence and pit white people against Blacks. That's why we see, the vote for this racist man, openly racist madman such as Trump, because too many whites, not all, but too many whites have been convinced that their enemy is us, Black people, and people of color to a lesser extent. And so they're fighting against us. Unfortunately, I'm afraid that we're going to see things get worse before they get better. But there are signs of hope that we might actually regroup that, because there have been times in history where Blacks and whites have formed a sort of tenuous détente, maybe a rapprochement. And there are signs that we might do that again, particularly when you look at what's going on in Gaza, how that's galvanizing a lot of people, that movement might intersect. And we're seeing signs it's going to intersect with cop cities, the movement against cop cities, perhaps reparations, affordable housing, all these issues that afflict us. Look, the problem is that we have, and you don't have to be a Marxist to say this, to understand this, but it's very clear. The problem is that we have an economy in the United States that is completely owned by private interests. There's no public space. What does that mean? It means that everything, including our healthcare system, our water, everything is intended to profit a small set of private investors. We need to really address that. And that's not a black or white issue. That's an issue that the working class needs to understand, rally around, and fight against. This is the last thing I'll say about it. The question really is not Democrat or Republican. The question is this, right? Why do workers do 100% of the work and only get 42% of the pay? That's all you need to know, right? And actually, before we go into 2028, that's the question we need to ask and act on.
So when you combine the macro failing of the American empire, and we've got Ukraine, we've got Gaza, we've got the conflict with China over Taiwan, just as an example, all of these self-inflicted wounds. When you combine that macro failing and the inherent bigotry and racism in American culture, I think you wind up with what the former president said in a campaign event in San Francisco in 2008. That former president, well, he was running for president at the time, Barack Obama, referring to working class voters in old industrial towns dominated by job loss. He said, quote, "They get bitter. They cling to guns or religion or to anti-immigrant sentiment and look at people who aren't like them, or anti-trade sentiments as a way to explain their frustrations. They cling to their guns, they cling to their religion, they cling to their xenophobia." I think that's a snapshot of how we've gotten to where we are on the 6th of November, John Jeter.
I could not agree more. And the irony, of course, is that, Obama he did have an understanding, but the irony is that Obama described the phenomena that afflicts us perfectly. And then he worked to implement, to deepen the resentment of the working class, particularly the white working class, by during the campaign, talking about black men's misogyny, scapegoating us once again. Barack Obama really did this nation a great disservice. And one of the reasons that Kamala lost, I think, is because, what did George Bush say? Fooled me once. Thing is, I can't be fooled again. I think black people sort of understand that now with Barack Obama and this identity politics, which is a creation of white supremacy, by the way.
As we get out, David wants to know, what advice would you give the Dems as they now look towards the midterms 2 years from now? I'll say, listen to your base, provide substantive policy to address the concerns and needs of your base. Don't run from your base. What say you, John Jeter?
I would say have a long conversation with Bernie Sanders about what he did, about what he was doing, try to rebuild the Democratic Party and his image. Also, I would talk to Jesse Jackson about his 1984 and 88 campaigns. What did he do? You can rebuild the Democratic Party. I don't know if they have the will, but that would be my advice to them.
And remember, I'm glad you mentioned Bernie Sanders, because I'm sure you will agree, if I didn't actually get this from you or from our next guest, Joe Biden wasn't nominated initially to beat Donald Trump. Joe Biden was nominated to beat Bernie Sanders.
Right. That's exactly right. And if you listen to Donald Trump, especially in 2016 or 2020, he was afraid of Bernie Sanders. He really was afraid of Bernie Sanders, because Bernie Sanders, I believe, would have beat him. Actually, I think would have beat the brakes off him, very much like he did to Kamala Harris. It is very clear that the Republican Party was going right, and the Democratic Party was going left. And the Democrats got rid of their guy who could have taken the party to greater heights.
John Jeter, my brother, thank you so much for your time today. Greatly appreciate it. And there'll be a whole lot more for us to talk about going forward.
Can't wait.
Great. Thank you, John. Really appreciate it. So, folks, Let me again thank Brother John Jeter for his time this morning. We still have a whole lot for us to discuss. Thank you for those thumbs up. Thank you for those thumbs up. Daniela, your donation via the super sticker, greatly appreciate that, folks. If you could be so kind to follow Daniela's lead here. Thank you to my international viewers and listeners. I know we've got Holistic Politics in Finland. And Holistic Politics, I am appointing you to be my point person in Finland. It's up to you to get everybody in Finland to tune in to the Connecting the Dots podcast. I greatly appreciate that. With that, let's move to our next guest. She's the editor and senior columnist at Black Agenda Report. She's the author of Prejudential: Black America and the Presidents, Margaret Kimberley. Margaret, as always, good morning. Thank you so much for your time. I know you've got a very tight schedule. Greatly appreciate you joining me this morning.
Thank you so much. It's good. Always good to talk to you.
So 2024 election is over. As you predicted, Trump won. I had predicted 293, 245 Harris victory, and I made that prediction. I shifted my position in the last week of the campaign because I was looking at that Trump racist hate fest 2024 that took place at Madison Square Garden, and I really thought that was going to be a game changer. I was obviously wrong. Your thoughts, Margaret Kimberley?
Well, I think there's several things that happened in this race. I think we cannot underestimate the degree to which Kamala Harris being anointed instead of elected in a primary process, how much that turned people off. The person who went through a democratic process was Trump. He won the Republican Party. Kamala Harris was plopped in after they panicked over Biden's debate performance. They should have been panicking a year and a half ago. They should have eased Biden out after the 2022 midterms, but they didn't. And then they panicked, and then the big donor said he had to go, and they put her in. They didn't even have an open convention and give some veneer of democracy. And this was a person who was not chosen. I call her the hollow woman. We know about the nervous laugh, the word salads, the strange language. She can't express herself in a way that politicians usually can. Talking off the cuff, being unscripted. She couldn't do it. And then what did she talk about the last month or so of the campaign? Liz Cheney. Republicans. I want a Republican in my cabinet. I'm going to have a bipartisan commission advising me, which is ridiculous. There are no never Trump Republicans. Can we stop saying this? She was pandering to people who literally don't exist. Instead of pandering to Democrats, the people she couldn't get out. I was just told that Trump got basically the number of votes he got in 2020, about 74 million.
Right.
She got 15 million fewer votes than Biden. Is that correct?
That's about right. I think so. As it stands right now, I think so.
And so that speaks to the fact that people didn't want her. And then she got this big promotion to be the nominee, and she did not speak to what Democrats want. And I think it's very important, especially for Black people, to dump the Democratic Party. The worst thing we can do is, I'm already seeing this, blaming the Greens, blaming Arabs, blaming Latino men, blaming people who didn't bother to vote. The blame should start at the top. The Democratic Party is a money laundering scam for rich people. That's why she raised more than twice as much as Trump did. Finance Capital loves them. And that's why they can't talk about the things that people need. That's why Build Back Better didn't happen. That's why the stimulus and other COVID programs just disappeared. They are of no use to us. And I also want to say this. We are already seeing A lot of liberals are just as brainwashed. We talk about the MAGA hat wearers. They're so brainwashed. They're indoctrinated. They're dumb. They're no more indoctrinated than anybody else. People act like they're in a cult and have to be deprogrammed. And it has to start today. Well, I guess you have to, journey of 1,000 miles begins with the single step. But I think it's important to be of one accord. I already left the Democratic Party. You must dump the Democratic Party and build something new. That's a big issue. It will involve a lot of discussion, a lot of debate, but that's where it must begin.
Dino, thank you for that contribution. Greatly, greatly appreciate it. But Margaret, Margaret, why do you hate Black women so? Margaret, oh, wait a minute, you're a Black woman. My bad. Bad. No, but wait a minute. In all seriousness, in listening to the shows this morning, they hate her because she's a Black woman. They hate her because she's a Black woman. I go back to Hillary Clinton, who I think is a woman, won the popular vote in 2016 with 66 million votes. Kamala got 66 million votes by the last time I checked the numbers, because I know they're still tabulating. So Hillary lost the Electoral College in 16, but won the general population vote with 66 million votes. Kamala Harris got 66 million votes. Well, maybe it's because she's Black. Well, wait a minute. Barack Obama won twice. He's Black, last I checked. So, and I understand being a Black woman, I got it. That is a struggle. That is a challenge. I realize there are a lot of people that don't like her or wouldn't trust her because she's a Black woman. But Margaret, this is a multivariant equation. And if you stay stuck on that point, you will miss the obvious. There was no message. Sheila, thank you for your contribution. Margaret.
Yes, there was no message. No message to there's a group of people, I call them low motivation voters. And I'm sure I haven't coined anything new, but they're people who lean Democrat or Republican, but they are not motivated to vote. They don't think it's necessarily important in their lives. And if you don't say anything to them, if you talk about Liz Cheney, instead of the fact that they can't pay their bills, they're not coming out to vote. And it is the Democratic Party's responsibility to say, how do we get these people out? Obama did it twice. However, that was very rare. And when his name was no longer on the ballot, those folks who were disengaged went right back to being disengaged again. But you can't win a presidential campaign offering joy and Liz Cheney. I mean, this is I really, it's already started. She lost because she's a woman. Americans are just misogynists. A woman can't win in this country. I don't believe that. And we need to stop excusing the people these elites who run the Democratic Party. Stop excusing them. Stop defending them. It is entirely their fault that Democrats have faced this debacle. But the debacle goes back a long way. I was listening to you and John Jeter. Well, John's one of my favorite people. You both are. And
but you need to get out more. But thank you.
No.
Thank you, Margaret.
And you were I lost my thought about the brilliant things you were saying. But we have this situation of a party that fails again and again, and Black people especially must stop defending them, and we have to start thinking about building something new, because this is ridiculous. Every 4 years we act as though the only thing we can do politically is keep Republicans out of office. There's nothing else we can do. We have no other role. We have no agency to do anything. We do have agency, and we need to start using it. And we have to start by not allowing these people to keep controlling us. We are controlled by these people who don't care. Their only concern is doing what their donors want. The weapons manufacturers, Wall Street, Big Pharma, Israel lobby. That's who they care about. And you can't win if they didn't even go through the motions of talking about what they were going to do. I mean, this has got to be the worst campaign ever. And so we see this result.
But Margaret, what part of the opportunity economy didn't resonate with you?
I never understood it. It was crazy. It was like, you can get crypto. It was like, so Obama gives that dumb speech demonizing black men. These old presidents, they need to keep them out because they invited Bill Clinton to Michigan of all places.
Right.
And he said, Palestine belonged to the Jews and screw the Palestinians. They can all get killed. And Obama a couple of weeks ago was scolding black men. They don't support a black woman. They're just a bunch of misogynists. And they respond with BS. Something about crypto, and you might be able to get money if you're an entrepreneur. You might get up to $25,000 to buy a house, up to $25,000, by the way. I mean, and
never explained how you were going to pay for it.
Yes,
while you're sending $8 billion to Ukraine and 8.7 to Israel, how are you going to pay for it?
And that's another thing about foreign policy. There was revulsion about the genocide in Palestine, but there's also disgust. People aren't stupid. They see billions of dollars going to Ukraine for the past 2 years, almost 3 years now, to try to fight Russia, to try to weaken Russia, which is actually stronger now than it was when this all began, to give money to Israel. Netanyahu being invited to speak to Congress 4 times, members of Congress jumping up and down, clapping like trained seals. That's their priority. And for them, and people know, if you've got money for Israel, if you have money for Ukraine, then you must have money for me too. And when you don't say what it is you have money for, when you don't mention how you're going to help people, then those low motivation voters stay home and you get 15 million fewer votes than your predecessor did. That's, I think, a big part of the problem that she faced.
J.M. Clinton said, my niece didn't vote because she thinks it doesn't make a difference. And speak to that, because I would say that that's rather short-term thinking, that voting does matter. The problem is, well, let me not. Your thoughts there. And Daniel, thank you for your super sticker. Greatly appreciate that. Margaret, your thoughts to J.M. Clinton saying, my niece didn't vote because she thinks it doesn't make a difference.
Well, it makes a difference, but it doesn't make as big a difference as it ought to. The only place where I can say there is a big difference is the federal judiciary, which is significant. I can't think of anything else. She didn't even claim she was going to raise the minimum wage. I mean, nothing. And so when people say it doesn't matter, are they completely wrong? I do care about the courts, but I don't care about that in the absence of being lied to about other things. I don't care about that in the absence of a genocide. That was Joe Biden's priority.
Lied to about other things. Oh, so you mean there are American soldiers fighting in harm's way some places around the world? Is that what you mean?
Yes, there are. I know that's what Kamala Harris claimed was not happening, but it is, and there could be more. Now, the problem is when Trump claims he's going to be a peacemaker, that's not true.
Right.
He was president before. We know what he's going to do. He supported Israel to the hilt also, but the Democrats gave him that opening. They're the ones who allowed him to pretend to be different. And that's entirely their fault. I think there's something else that helped him, and that's immigration. And this outpouring of asylum seekers across the border, the lack of preparation for it, the strain it caused in many places around the country. I think that was another thing. And now that he's going to enter office, with majorities in both houses of Congress, you're going to see some kind of change in immigration policy. I don't want to see it, although the bill, this bipartisan bill that Trump killed, it was pretty much, everything Republicans claim to have wanted. So, but that's going to be his priority. We will see if what he's going to do. He apparently told Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, you've got to finish this up. I guess that means you can kill as many people as you want until January 20th. And then once I'm in office, you have to stop. But we will see what that means. He talks out of both sides of his mouth about Ukraine. On the one hand, he said he was against giving more money. Then he turned around. He's the one who did the deal, who got other Republicans on board. So it's not clear to me if that's really going to change. He's the one who ramped up sanctions against countries like Venezuela and Cuba and sent many Venezuelans across the border that now people want to complain about. So, so we're gonna see something that's he can do what he wants. We're going to see something very different, but so I'm not going to say there is no difference. But I also don't scold people for not voting. I used to do that. You have to vote. You have to vote. Black people died, so you can vote. Blah blah blah. No, I don't do that anymore. I don't do that. People don't have to vote. And if you don't give them a reason to vote, well, then you can't cry when you got 15 million fewer votes than the other party member did 4 years ago.
Well, and to your point, to reiterate your point, Margaret, it's not that our ancestors died so that we could vote. It's not that Mrs. Hamer sacrificed to the degree that she did so that we could vote. It was so we would have something to vote for. And so people walking around saying, well, all of these black men that didn't vote for Kamala, all of these people that didn't vote for Kamala, you did not give them any reason to. And this is political science 101.
Yeah.
People have a tendency not to vote against things. People vote for things.
Exactly.
So if you're presenting the negative, more times than not, people will stay home instead of turning out for you. Shelley, thank you. I think it's pronounced Shelley. Thank you so much for your super sticker. Greatly, greatly appreciate it. And so Shelley also says, so genocide, militarism, and courting war criminals is not a winning strategy? Margaret Kimberley.
No, it isn't. And I wanted to add something else to what you said. People fought and died for freedom, for liberation.
Correct.
They did not fight and die so, an airheaded Kamala Harris can run for president in the 21st century. But no, people don't want those things. And, and the fact that the corporate media ignores what people are saying and concerned about, because once again, they were all on her side. The New York Times, the Washington Post, they all, if they endorsed Kamala Harris. So she had buy-in from all the quote unquote right people. She had the money, but she had no message. It was a vapid, hollow woman telling you, well, I'm not Trump and Trump is a bad guy. I want to say something else about Trump. I think Trump, part of his appeal to those people who like him is the fact that he just doesn't give up. He didn't care that he lost. Mm-hmm. He didn't care that he was criminally convicted, that he lost a civil suit by a woman he raped. They admire the fact that he said, F everybody else, I'm running again. I really think that's a big part of his appeal. I'm not saying it's the best reason to vote for someone, but if we're going to talk about him, let's talk about all the things that gave him, that he maintained. He kept all his votes. I think he got 74 million votes this time and in 2020. So people aren't dissuaded, and his people like him. You make, and liberals have to stop feeling superior and looking down on people. You need to know, just a cold-hearted political calculus, his people still like him. None of that matters. And for some people, the fact that he dared to run again is something that that makes him an attractive candidate.
And Margaret, I think what you've just said validates what I've been saying about the message. They like his message. Now, we can talk about it's racist. We can talk about it's misogynistic. We all that it is what it is. Or as they said, it's what, as the mob would say, it's what it is. But it's their message. And he is the reincarnation of the devil. There's no question about that. But he is a superior marketeer. He understands what resonates with, because I was reading reports that in the last week, his advisors were telling him, look, man, enough of this racist crap. You've got to modulate your message. And he was like, no, I'm doubling down.
Well, that is part of his appeal. I think it's a mistake to think only about that. But many of his supporters say he speaks his mind. He speaks his own mind. He speaks their minds.
Right.
He says things they want to be able to say. I think, he had a PR problem with that rally in Madison Square Garden. But as I've said, it didn't dissuade his people very much. It could have hurt him if Harris had been doing better and had already excited more people, but she didn't. So it didn't touch him at all.
Dino says, my 21-year-old didn't want to vote either. I asked him to vote against the genociders. He did it for me. That, I think, Margaret, goes back to the point of long-term strategy.
Yes, it does. I mean, and that's something that resonated with people. The fact that was Biden's priority. His priority was the genocide. And that's something that people, so when this person made this appeal to his son, then that's what inspired him to vote. But I want to say again, especially to Black people, stop blaming white women, Latino men, whoever it is you're blaming because they were too stupid to vote for Kamala. Blame the Democratic Party. Grow up. Stop it. You have to have a more mature analysis, and you've got to dump the Democratic Party. They are our political death. There is no hope for our survival. I think actually for anybody's survival, except to get rid of these phony people who, can you imagine Kamala Harris bragged, I'm not going to ban fracking. I'm going to increase oil production. But these quote unquote environmental groups said that she was the one to vote for. They weren't fooling anybody either.
That's a perfect example of the next point that I was going to raise. And I know you got 2 minutes. So I'm going to get you out on time. Thank you. There were too many circles that she couldn't square. The economy, the financialized side of the economy is doing great. The real economy is in the toilet. She couldn't square that circle. Immigration. She never spoke to American foreign policy that's driving people to the border. All she could speak to was building a wall to keep them out. She went to CARICOM to get them to back the United States play on against Haiti. That's why those Haitians were in Springfield, Ohio, allegedly by J.D. Vance eating people's animals. So you can't twist up your face in disgust about the racist trope about Haitians in Springfield when it's your policy that was driving them there in the first place. Margaret, speak and then tell us goodbye.
Okay, I just want to say about immigration, Biden deported more Haitians than Trump did. Obama deported more people overall than Trump did. So this is just immigration is another issue that Democrats use to virtue signal and to lie to people to try to get votes. But we shall see. I don't think material conditions for people will not be better under Trump. There's not going to be peace under Trump, but he won the argument. And because he won the argument, he's going to be president again. And thank you very, very much.
And to that point, Margaret, I'll say this. He won the argument. The question now is, will we win the fight?
If we have to fight, though.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Margaret, thank you. You
Thank
fit
you.
us in. Love you. Greatly appreciate it. All right, folks. So, I think that point that Margaret just made is the point. He won the argument. But now I ask you all as Americans and as citizens of the world, whether you're in the UK like Daniela, or whether you're in Finland. And Daniela, thank you. I am appointing you as my representative in the UK. So I need you to be sure that every single citizen in the United Kingdom, Daniela, it's up to you to get them to watch the show. Jonathan Soul, thank you for that super sticker. To be fair, we were in less wars under Trump. The economy seemed better under Trump. You voted for Stein, free Palestine. Oh, I feel you, partner. I don't think the economy was better under Trump in terms of looking at the real data. I understand what that perception was about. And, because the economy for you might have been better. And that hence the point. Perception is reality. We were in less wars. And that was one thing that was one of the circles that Kamala couldn't square. Joe Biden started that conflict in Ukraine. That's a fact. Oh, here's another thing that I think is interesting. Don't know if any of you saw the story last night about the problems with the voting machines that they were having in some precincts in Georgia. There were a number of precincts in Georgia that were allegedly hacked. And if they weren't hacked, there was a problem with the system in Georgia. And I'm trying to put my hands quickly. So I was talking to State Representative Derek Jackson when I was doing the Politics in Color piece last night, which, by the way, you all might want to go check out. Go to politicsincolor.com. Go to politicsincolor.com. You can check out our election night coverage. I thought the analysis that we provided last night was stellar. But anyway, our first guest was Georgia State Representative Derek Jackson, and in Georgia. And so there were these stories that popped up that there were problems with some of the voting machines in Georgia. And so I started seeing stories that attributed the problem to Russian hacking. And I looked at that and I said, that doesn't make any sense. And then Representative Jackson came on, state representative, and he said, the problem with the machines were in black districts. The problem with the machines were not in white precincts in Georgia. They were in predominantly black precincts in Georgia. And that let me know it couldn't have been Russian hacking, because you have to understand the relationship between Russia and African countries. If you understand that, there's no way in the world that Russians would hack into black precincts, because they respect our struggle. They contributed greatly to the liberation in Angola. They contributed greatly to the liberation in other African countries, because Russia is an anti-imperialist country. Patrice Lumumba University is in Moscow. So how are you going to have Patrice Lumumba University, where a lot of Africans go to be educated, by the way? How are you going to see, folks? You got to do some reading. You got to do some reading. The first hadith in the Holy Quran tells us that the prophet, may peace be upon him, sitting, meditating in a cave, is visited by the angel Gabriel. And what's the first thing that the angel says to the prophet? Read. And what is the prophet's response? What am I to do? I am illiterate. I am paraphrasing here because I don't have the whole thing in front of me. Please forgive me. I am illiterate. What am I to do? Read. And the prophet says again, I am illiterate. What am I to do? And the angel Gabriel says, read. And this exchange goes back and forth. And then the angel embraces him. And the rest is what we know is the rest. So read. That way, when you see stories such as, oh, the Russians are hacking Georgia no, doesn't make any sense. So if y'all got any other questions, we can spend a little time here. Monroe says, we are going to we're going to have to really fight now. Yes, Monroe. Is it Monroe or Monroe? Depending on where you're from. My folks are from Louisiana, so I got to say Monroe. Yes, we are really going to have to fight now. That there's no question about that. Yes, Margaret Kimberley, Daniel, Margaret Kimberley is a true intellectual. There is no question about that. So let me do this. I'm not seeing a whole lot of questions here. Holistic politics. My fellow Finnish countrymen have historic traumas with Russia. That's why most here don't get the Russia-Africa connection and anti-imperialism. Okay. Holistic politics. Thank you for that point. And let me ask you this. Is holistic, if you can answer this quickly for me, is the talking about the Finnish countrymen having historic traumas, is the historic trauma with Russia or is the historic trauma with the former Soviet Union? That to me could be a part of the dynamic. I don't know that history. That's why I'm asking the question. Now, Andrew just said, I just think America will never have a woman president, to which I say, these things are moving on me quickly, so please forgive me for my losing track where I am. Andrew, I just think America will never have a woman president. To that, Andrew, I say, nay, nay. Again, Hillary Clinton won the general election vote in 2016 with 66 million votes. There were 66 million people in the country in 2016 that voted for Hillary Clinton. She won the general election. She lost the electoral college. So, and also, let me say to you, to that point, Andrew, there was a time when we all believed that there would never be an African-American president of the United States. And Barack Obama broke down that myth. So things don't change until they change. Things don't happen until they happen. History doesn't change until we change history. So again, I understand the misogyny in the country. I got it. I understand the racism in the country. I got it. What was my point? Oh, but that was I through? But this is a multivariant equation. There are a number of factors that have contributed to the butt whooping that Kamala Harris just endured. Here are a couple points. One, Joe Biden should have gotten out of the race in January. First point, Joe Biden should have gotten out of the race in January. I said a year and a half ago he was not going to be the nominee. He should have gotten out of the race in January. Point number two, had he gotten out of the race in January, the Democrats would have had time to have a primary And instead of anointing or appointing a nominee, they would have been able to democratically elect one. Now, had Kamala Harris gone through the standard process and become the nominee, then great. Great. James Carville wrote a piece in the New York Times in July, this past July, where he said, there still is time to have a truncated process. Do not anoint her. Now, I didn't particularly agree with his methodology of how you were going to go about having a nominee, but he at least put the point out there, and he was absolutely right. And rarely do I agree with James Carville, but on this point, James Carville was spot on. Other point, she didn't have a damn message. She did not speak to the interests of her constituency. As John Jeter very clearly said, she ran from her base, as the Democrats always do. They come to the African American community, they pat us on the head every 4 years, they tell us how much they need us, they tell us how much they love us. And then once we do what we do, which is put them in office, they offer no policy. And the primary reason is because we don't demand anything. How many times did people call into my Sirius XM show as I was saying, there's no policy here, and they were telling me, it doesn't matter, Wilmer. It doesn't matter, Wilmer. We just have to get rid of Trump, Wilmer. We have to vote for Kamala because she's a black woman that went to an HBCU and she's an AKA, Wilmer. You don't understand, Wilmer. Well, maybe I do. Maybe I do. And maybe some of us need to understand a little more. Are we headed to World War III? Well, KJ No told you yesterday that we are in World War III. And understand that that comes in phases and stages. Right now, we are in a info war. Hence the allegation that Russia hacked into the system in Georgia and messed up with the votes. That did not happen. But you've got these misinformation, you've got these disinformation campaigns that are being waged, trying to convince you that somehow we're supposed to fight China over Taiwan. Oh, there were stories that North Korean troops are in Ukraine. Mark Schleboda was on the show Monday or Tuesday saying that's a lie. Just not true. We're supposed to believe that we are in Ukraine defending democracy. Well, if we're in Ukraine defending democracy, why was Samantha Power in Ukraine in 2014 fomenting the Maidan coup to overthrow the democratically elected Yanukovych government in Ukraine? I think it was Yanukovych, Lukashenko, Yanukovych. Sometimes I get my Ukrainian presidents confused. That's a lie. So, PNAC and CNAC, Project for the New American Century. A think tank created by Dick Cheney and Paul Wolfowitz and Scooter Libby and a whole bunch of other neocons after they got thrown out of the George H.W. Bush White House. They left public life and went into a private think tank called PNAC, the Project for the New American Century, where they started developing white papers and started positioning individuals that would champion the neoconservative agenda. And so you can, if you go to Google and you just search on PNAC, PNAC, letter to Bill Clinton, and look who signed that letter. Dick Cheney didn't sign the letter, but he was the chairman of PNAC, the Project for the New American Century. They were asking President Bill Clinton, to go and overthrow Saddam Hussein. This was before George Bush did it. They were asking Bill Clinton, I believe, in his first term. So all of this stuff about Saddam Hussein had to be overthrown because of 9/11, that was all BS. They were trying to get Bill Clinton to assassinate Gaddafi 8-10 years before September 11th. So it's a neoconservative think tank similar to the Heritage Foundation and others that spend their time creating policy papers, indoctrinating candidates and elected officials on how to further the neoconservative agenda. Hence, Project 2025. That didn't come out of PNAC. That came out of the Heritage Foundation. But they are similar entities, and they operate in a similar manner. And holistic politics, thank you for that answer about the relationship between Finland and Russia. Thank you very much. But in holistic politics, I still have anointed you my now I sound like Donald Trump. I have anointed you as my representative in Finland. Victoria Nuland's husband, who led PNAC at least at some point, I'd have to research that one. May very well have been that one. I'll have to research. I don't remember. Carolyn says she hates Trump, but she's happy Kamala lost. 5 points of pure consequences. I'm not sure what that means. 5 points of pure consequences. I'm not sure what that means, but okay. And Karen, you MAGA just don't get it. You will lose your health care, Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare. You MAGA have no idea what you have done voting for Trump. You're probably right, Karen. There's going to be hell to pay across the landscape. But Tom Porter said something I remember. He said something to me. Well, let me combine two ideas. One, I attribute to my father, because I remember him saying, and he used to say this all the time. He said, boy, them racist white people hate, and they hate good. And Tom's point would be, they much rather eat their racism than sit down and have a fine meal. So, Karen, to your point about they don't get it, they'll lose their health care, Social Security, Medicaid. Absolutely. But here's what they're going to do when they do that. They're going to blame immigrants. They won't sit down and do any type of autopsy on their circumstance that leads them to the reality that they have voted for their own demise. They won't do that. No, they'll find a scapegoat. They'll blame black people. They'll blame Martians. They'll blame immigrants. Then Karen, you say because Congress and the Senate are now in the majority. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. So now you're really going to get screwed. But hey, we've survived worse, and we can survive this. The question is, are you willing to fight? That's the question. Are you willing to fight? Project 2025, should we be afraid? Hell yes, you should be afraid. Got to go now? Yes, we should be afraid. But what do you do with that fear? Are you scared? Are you scared? You should be scared because you're about to get screwed. What you going to do? Are you going to close your blinds, lock your doors, park your car, and sit and cower in the darkness of your homes? Or are you going to go to the streets, literally and figuratively, and protect and defend yourselves and the democracy? What are you going to do? Because all is not lost. This is just a blip on the screen. Well, let me change that. This could just be a blip on the screen. Depends on what you allow to happen. Karen says, holistic, if Putin wins this war, do you think they will go for? Hell no. Do I think they will go holistic if Putin? Oh, I see. I think so. Okay. Karen is responding to another contributor here. Holistic, if Putin wins this war, do you think they'll go for Finland next? Let me answer that. No, because that's not what this is about. If Russia had started the war, if Russia had eyes on Ukraine, if Russia had eyes on taking over Europe, then the answer to the question might be yes. But that's not what this is about. Russia's involvement in Ukraine is not an offensive move, it's a defensive move, because it's Joe Biden that used Ukraine as a proxy, used Ukraine as a pawn to try to entice Russia into the fight. And all Russia has done is respond to the provocation of the United States. That's why if you go back to the meeting between Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin in Geneva in, I think it was July of 22. I think it was 22. No, 21. If you go to the meeting that Biden had with Putin in Geneva in 2021, Putin told Joe Biden, I'm giving you my security demands. And that word security is very important here. I'm giving you my security demands in writing, and I expect your response to my demands in writing. And Joe Biden ignored him. That was, I believe, the final brick in the wall, to quote Pink Floyd, the final brick in the wall to where Putin said, the West will not listen to me. I have to defend and protect my country. And therefore, you are forcing me to take action. That's the history, folks. That's the reality, folks. How can Trump end war in Ukraine if Congress still wants it? Good question. Well, first of all, it's not technically a war because Congress has not declared it as such, and Congress is the only one that can technically declare war. Trump can end the conflict in Ukraine by just not sending them any more money, by not sending them any more weapons. That's very simple. And oh, by the way, the war the war basically is over. Ukraine has lost. They got their hind parts whooped. That's over. Look, when you run out of soldiers, when you run out of tanks, when you run out of artillery in what is basically an artillery-based conflict, when you run out of artillery shells, when you're scavenging your countryside, pulling men off the roads, conscripting them into service, and sending them to die on the front lines, when you're emptying your prisons and sending those prisoners to the front line, you've lost. Now, You may not have cried uncle yet, but you've lost. You've lost. It reminds me of when I was a kid, and I'll drop these names lovingly. When Donald James used to sit on, who was older and bigger than me, and Donald used to sit on when we were kids, he'd sit on our chest and poke us and slap us as little kids and make us cry uncle. You weren't getting Donald James, you weren't getting Emerson McGee off of your chest until you cried uncle. So while you're laying there on the ground and he's poking you in your chest, the fight is over. Even though you're still laying there, still struggling, the fight is over. The battle is lost. You just haven't cried uncle yet. And once you did, then Donald or Emerson got up and left you alone for 15 minutes or so. And I love both Donald and Emerson. I hope they don't mind my using that example of when we were kids 50 years ago. So the war in Ukraine, for all intents and purposes, it's over. Ukraine lost a long time ago. And remember, Zelensky wanted and did successfully negotiate a peace agreement in April of 22. It started in February. In April, he negotiated an agreement to end the conflict with Putin. And then the United States sent Boris Johnson to visit Zelensky and tell Zelensky, no, nay, nay, nay. Under no circumstances is the West going to support this. You got to keep fighting. So that's that. Caroline, my mom is disabled and I'm between jobs and I live off her food stamps. It's depressing, but it is what it is. I understand. I understand. So, folks, with that, let's do this. Let's end this for the day. Please, to all of you, thumbs up, big hearts, give what you can. To all of those of you that did the super sticker, thank you. California. What is this? Let me click on that. What I get? Oh, Daniel, thank you in California for that super sticker. Greatly appreciate it, because it does cost us to do this. And as I've said to you, we're here for you and we can't do this without you. What we are doing, and my producer asked me to no longer put her name out there because she wants to stay behind the scenes. And I understand I got a phenomenal. That's why I speak in the we. Holistic, thank you. Buff, peace. Greatly appreciate it. Lee says, do I think that not having most all states having the mail-in ballots being down the turnout? I don't know about that as much. Let me try to answer your question this way. I think lack of confidence in the system. Whether it's mail-in ballots, whether it's paper ballots, whether it's electronic. Who's the guest for tomorrow? Oh, great question, Wilmer Leon. I asked myself, who's the guest for tomorrow? Stay tuned and find out. But if you want to talk World War III, if you want to talk the possibility of nuclear conflict, if you want to understand the realities, tune in tomorrow and you'll get the answer to who my guest tomorrow is going to be. Hey, Rampless Sense, hey, I understand if there are things that prevent one from contributing. I get it. I'm just asking those that can, please do. If you can't, the thumbs up helps. The big heart helps. Forwarding the show, recommending this to others helps. We take what we get. We don't get upset. So with all of that, folks, what I'm gonna do right now, what what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to thank my I got to thank my guests, John Jeter and Margaret Kimberley. Thank them both. They joined us today. I want to thank you all so much for watching, so much for listening. The Connecting the Dots podcast with me, Dr. Wilmer Leon. Stay tuned for new episodes tomorrow. It's, as the Moon Man would say, it's going to be a big one. Also, follow, subscribe, leave a review, share the show, follow on social media. You can find all the links below in the show description. Remember, folks, this is where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge, because talk without analysis is just chatter, and we don't chatter here on Connecting the Dots. See y'all tomorrow. Until then, I'm Dr. Wilmer Leon. Have a great one. Peace. I'm out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.